Hello, everybody. This is Joshua Hatton with One Nation Under Whiskey podcast. I'm joined today, and as always, by Jason, Neil, Patrick, Harris, Johnston, Yellen in the hizzy. Woo!
That is such a beautiful rhythmic pattern to it. I really like it.
Jason, Neil, Patrick, Harris, Johnston, Yellen. Boom, boom, boom. I feel like I'm just ticking boxes.
Right? Isn't that lovely? I got the Neil. I got the Patrick. I got the Harris. I got the Johnston. I got the Yellen. And we've got the name. Jesus, so how many names is that? One. So again, we're back to the Foster paradox, right? So now it's Jason, Neil, Patrick, Harris, Johnston, Yellen. So Jason 6 names, but then Jason 6 names becomes a 7th name. So we're in the Foster paradox.
Yeah, I had such a difficult time with that way back then. I really wish you didn't bring it up. Because that was just going to hurt my brain all over again.
I just like watching you squirm every time we return to the Foster paradox.
The Foster paradox. I absolutely love it. So, yeah.
We have to give him congratulations.
Do we?
He submitted some fictional work to a writing competition and won.
I thought you were going to say he submitted some fictional work and they didn't believe it.
Which actually is close to a John Irving quote.
Is it?
John Irving, who you'll know from The World According to Garth and Cider House Rules and Prayer for Own Meaning, so on and so forth. Once said, you have to be careful with fiction. It has to be believable. Yeah, and so if you have a dinner where your grandfather leaves the table and goes outside and pisses against the passenger door of your car and you write up that story, folk will go, no, don't believe that. So there you go. You must remain cautious, even with fiction. Amazing.
Well, congrats to Mr. James Foster. So he got approved. Are they gonna? Are we looking at a New York Times bestseller coming out at some point?
Fingers crossed. Ooh. Someday. He as part. I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this on the podcast. I'm just so proud of him. But
What's the plot?
Will his winning entry will be published.
Wow.
Yeah, very cool. A wonderful achievement for a dear friend of many, many years who in his retirement has turned his hand to ideas that have been percolating through his professional life. And now here he is putting it out into the world.
Mazel to the tizzle.
100%. So I raise my chinar to him.
Speaking of chinar, Jason.
Yes.
It's not spelled how it's pronounced, much like a thrusk. So I think that the Scots and whoever created the word chinar are in cahoots.
I believe it's the Italians we're up against here.
Oh, right. The Italians. Yeah. So we got an email from Christopher Sebastian. You would call him Sebastian. We would call him Seabass.
I was going to say, I would call him Seabass.
And his email. Oh, I'm so good. I feel so good that you're letting me front load an email here. Anyway, I just need to soak that in for a little bit.
We both know you're just creating more editing for yourself because there's going to be a lot of these sentences on the cutting room floor. So you treat yourself, Joshua. You go to town, my friend.
So he sends us an email that, upon first blush, the subject is kind of difficult to read because the word is CY and then parenthetically the letter O and then NAR and then parenthetically the letter A. It says, and a terroir talk. So I think what he's trying to say is sayonara and a terroir talk.
Yeah. Didn't your Kimono Dragon have a sayonara in a song title or an album title? I feel like you've played around with sayonara.
No, we've not played around with sayonara. We've played around with the word Szechuan. Because Chris's stage name was Szechuan Charlie.
Which of course it was.
And Joe was...
And by Chris, you mean Santos.
And by Chris, I mean Santos. And Joe's stage name was Jojono Dragon.
Jojono Dragon. Yeah. Okay.
And do you know what my stage name was? We don't use these stage names anymore. We found that they're incredibly offensive and teetering on racism, so we decided to stop using them.
So how about I don't guess and you just tell me?
So it's TVs, as in, someone who starred on television. Josh, and Josh is spelled Jaash. Paneer. TV is Josh Paneer. Kind of like Sag Paneer, but Josh Paneer.
Yeah. That doesn't sound like it's verging on racism. Maybe cultural appropriation, but
Szechuan Charlie, it kind of misses, right? We used to call
that's a little questionable.
It gets
that one.
It's murky.
Yeah.
It's murky, Jason.
Yeah. As we say in our house, it was a different time.
It was a different time. It was 2000. Anyway, so no, Kimono Dragon has never played with the word sayonara.
Interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, so Christopher Sebastian, a.k.a. Seabass, writes, he says, "Hey, Jason and Joshua." Mm-hmm. Just going to let that hang in the air for a second there.
Mm-hmm. Finally.
He says, "I'm sorry, Joshua. I had to start off with Jason only because I once accidentally addressed him as you. And I am making reparations for life."
It's true. I knew I had Seabass in my pocket the day he called me Joshua.
Before I continue with the email, I need you to know, and I guess our listeners, that this email is actually a two-parter. And so I want to read the part that is apropos to the conversation at hand. But the second part is apropos to other things we want to be talking about. So we'll read part one now and part two later. So Seabass continues. He says, "I hope you will forgive for the terrible sayonara pun in the subject line. It's truly bait to make you mispronounce the Amaro once again."
Do we forgive him? Did you?
Did I forgive him?
Yeah, for the pun.
Oh, I forget.
The very sentence you just read.
No,
You've already forgiven and forgotten.
When someone asks me to forgive a pun, I try to forget that immediately because no one, and I repeat, Jason, this is a very declarative statement, no one should ever apologize for a pun. They're the world's most perfect statement. It is the origin. It is the murky, bubbling primordial ooze that the dad joke came from, and so puns are never. You never need to forgive them.
So here's why I do not forgive him.
Oh, jeepers creepers!
Too many parenthetical letters.
Oh, I'm with you there.
It's tortured. This pun has been strangled to death with the parenthetical lettering. So, Seabass, sorry, reparations continue, and your lack of forgiveness in my quarter continues.
Do you know what? I'll do it, if I'm emailing someone reaches out to us in Singlecast Nation, says, "Hey, I'm looking to find some of your whiskey at a local shop." And I will say, "Can you let me know what bottle?" And then I put an S in parentheses after that you're looking for, and then I can help them find that. So I think a single parenthetical letter, perhaps at the end, works. But I agree. Yeah. I think his version is quite tortured.
Yeah, back of the class, Seabass. This has failed this day.
Did you bring a dunce cap for him?
Oh, he's wearing it right now.
So. Pun aside, he continues, "On the note, I have a delicious Chinar cocktail that I thought you might like. It's called, quote, The art of the choke.
Yes.
It says, insert classic Joshua line here. I feel as if I don't need to insert anything here. Like the joke, you don't have to say the joke to say the joke.
It's always the choke with you. I don't know.
He says, it's the art of the choke, and it can be done in a couple of different ways based on your mood. And so here's the basic. Says 1 ounce light rum or any flavorful rum, decent brown rum is a fine substitute. I take issue with the idea of talking about rums by color, but we'll talk about that in a later date. So 1 ounce of the light rum, 1 ounce of the chinar, 3/4 tablespoon lime juice. Apologies for any of our overseas listeners. I can't translate any of this to milliliters. 3/4 ounce simple syrup. Yeah.
If you want to give a guide, 1 ounce is 30 ml.
There you go. All right, so 3/4.
So people can write this on the back of a napkin themselves.
There you go. 1/4 ounce green chartreuse, which I agree with Seabass. He says it's sadly harder to find. That is true.
Man, it has kicked off, has it not?
It has.
Green chartreuse. I've heard stories from retailers where customers are turning down yellow chartreuse because they've come for green.
Yeah.
Like, but there's no green. What if you took yellow and worked with that?
Yeah, green chartreuse has become the pappy of chartreuse.
It's 100%. No one saw that coming.
And then the other bit of it is 1 mint sprig, and he says muddle mint and simple syrup, stir the other ingredients over ice, serve in a rocks glass with ice, garnish with a mint sprig, and then finally, he says this is a solid Amaro forward old-fashioned drink if you are feeling something bitter. But, and this is a big but, because he used 4 U's in this but. He says, if you are feeling something more tiki-esque, I recommend upping the lime and the simple syrup to 3/4 of an ounce each. And this is a bright, refreshing, and flavorful summer cocktail. So the art of the choke. And Jason, however you want to get choked out, you just have to change up some ratios.
Wow, that is wild. Pivoting an old-fashioned style Amaro cocktail to tiki, I'm still getting my head around that part of it all. But power to him. I love that we've got Foster getting the chinar off and running here, and artichokes coming to the fore in our cocktail ingredients. It's a wild time, Joshua. Hell of a time to be alive.
It's a thing. I'm excited. I like that this chinar has started sparking people's recipes. I was just in New York yesterday with our friend Mitch Wilson. You may remember him from Black Tot, and we enjoyed some nice summery cocktails. Mine had mezcal and green chartreuse and passion fruit.
You're part of the problem.
I am. I'm part of the problem.
Yeah, I'm going to make a cocktail that's Pappy, Springbank, and green chartreuse, and call it the Unobtainable.
The Unobtainable. Perfect. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Just with the warmer weather, the idea of cocktails is always a bit more alluring, and so I think perfect timing
for us in the up there world. For those in the down there world, fortunately, they're not getting the warmer weather. They're getting the slightly cooler weather, and they're moving out of their cocktail season. That, gosh, I looked longingly upon them when they were in their warmer weather phase. So.
You're talking about our Australian friends and our New Zealand friends and the hobbits. Yes.
Exactly. And the hobbits. Yeah. Oh my God. Those hobbits love their cocktails. They have one at 11. They have one at 1. Sometimes they have potatoes in them.
They have cocktail. Then they have second cocktail. 11sies. It's perfect.
So listen, I know we've got the second part of sea bass, and it's going to be part of a larger conversation we're moving to based on our last episode. But we've taken today, as we sometimes do in the warmer summer months. I know this drops at the very tail end of spring, but we often take time to spend with one another, and this is one of those occasions. We have not seen the other's face in a significant hot minute, and I'm kind of curious how you are, what you've been up to, where you've been, why have you not been in front of my face?
Because you won't turn around. I just see the back of your head every time I keep calling your name, Jason. Jason, you're like a cat. You just ignore me.
And there's a lot of spit gathering between my shoulder blades.
Jason, Neil, Patrick, Harris, Johnston, Yellen. Fucking won't turn around. Won't turn around.
That's why I started talking about the rhythm of that statement. I have really fallen for it.
I tell you, so what have I been doing? So something... Have I told you? So I'm gonna tell you two things.
I'm gonna go with no because
I'm gonna tell you two things. And one of them may or may not be interesting to you or the listeners, and the other one I think will be especially of interest to you and maybe the listeners.
so the listeners are kind of on a Hidington up in here.
Yeah, they're on the shit end of the stick here.
So good luck, friends. Let's see where this goes.
So you may remember 2.5 years ago, I started hitting the treadmill. I started running. And,
we have heard this.
Yeah, yeah. And I went from the whiskey cherub to the whiskey racing snake. I had...
by way of the whiskey whippet.
By way of the whiskey whippet, yeah. Whip it good. Do. Anyway, and I lost, I want to say about 50 pounds. About 50 pounds, which to our UK listeners, that's a bit over 3 stone. Or a bit under 3 stone, I should say. And then over the period of because 14 pounds per stone?
Yeah. 3 14s is 42.
So a bit over 3 stone. Why did I think it was 52? Did I carry the 10? I think I carried the 10.
You did.
I did. I carried the 10. Well, speaking of which, in the past, say...
carried an entire decimal.
In the past, say, 6 to 9 months... I have gained back about 10 pounds.
Okay. So you were thinking the 10.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I didn't like that because I got big, Jason. You didn't have to say it. I saw it in your heart. That's where I saw it.
I would never say that to somebody. I would let them live with themselves. Listen, this is what we teach our boys. People already feel bad enough about themselves no matter how they look. Be nice to people, right? Everyone's dealing with something. So how did the 10 come back on? Did you stop running? Did you run less? Did you drink more? Did you get a bit naughty in your habits? Like where did the 10 come from?
So I started running less. Travel kicked in. So running became a bit more difficult.
Indeed, it does.
And then there was like the evening, the nighttime munchies where I just said, if I could just have a little bit of licorice or a little, maybe I'll just have some peanuts or just something. I don't have a huge sweet tooth, but.
Well, let listeners know, Joshua, I've said it for years. It's always the peanuts with you.
And they're so nice and salty in my mouth, Jason.
See, get you where you're going.
Oh my gosh.
It's a naughty treat.
Jason, I was choking on peanuts the other day. I
feel like this isn't a joke.
So because I gained that 10, if we're being honest, maybe it's closer to 12 pounds back.
Okay. This is a safe place. You can be honest.
Haida's been looking at this sort of like food cleanse kind of thing, where the idea of it is not to just throw you on some crazy diet, but it starts you off on incredibly simple foods that you just kind of build on. And it gives you an idea of how your body's going to react to foods, which was good because I was getting heartburn. Gaining that weight back was giving me nonstop heartburn. And so I wanted to see if it was a food allergy issue or blah, blah, blah. Anyway, long story short, she put us on this month plan, which come July 10 will be the last day of it.
June 10?
Did I say July 10? I meant June 10. And we'll be on the last day of it. And so we've been on this food plan, and I've been upping my running to every other day. It used to be every day, but every other day is really much more manageable. And I lost 6 of those 10 to 12 pounds that I gained. So I feel really good about that. And so here's the connection to the second part that is of more interest to you and potentially of interest to the listeners. So,
well, if nothing else, we can be clear here that we do not pander to our listeners. Here's a whole bunch of shit you might have no interest in. Anyway, tell me. Go on.
So with this plan, you are allowed 1 cheat meal per week. So I've been off the sauce. Other than tasting some sample casks here and there, no beer, no wine, no whiskey, no sake, no nothing, no sherry. That part's been killing me. But you get a cheat meal, and so this past Thursday, your own brother Murray and his wife Nicola were in country.
I'm familiar.
You heard of them? Your brother, you heard of Murray and Nicola? They came into New Haven, and I treated them to Bar New Haven, my favorite pizza place.
Lovely.
And I had maybe 6 cocktails that night.
Oh, my Lord.
Well, no, hold on.
I was going to make a joke that if you're allowed 1 cheat meal, it would be an all-you-could-eat buffet.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to make that joke. So here you've decided to have 6 cocktails. So, okay.
Let me clarify. I had 3 cocktails, 2 beers, and a mezcal. Does that help?
So perfect.
Boy, did I wake up feeling like pure human garbage the next morning. But anyway, getting to spend time 2-on-2, me and Haida, Murray and Nicola, at Bar Pizza, eating Mexican street corn pizza.
Oh, delicious. Delicious.
Drinking some good IPAs. And then we went to this bar, Ordinary, just around the corner, and they specialize in cocktails. And our server was so good. Nicola was like going over the menu, and she just couldn't figure out what to say. And everybody else had ordered their drink, and she still didn't know what to do. And just in a flustered panic, she just looked at him and said, "Vodka." And he's like, "Okay, vodka. Okay, where can we go from here?" And so he started giving the spectrum of vodka-based drinks, and he was awesome. And it was just, she ended up getting some fancy version of a Cosmo. Haida got some sweet rum drink. Your brother got some agricole, like crazy, funky rum drink. Yeah, it was a good time treating your brother Nicola to a night in New Haven.
And you said, I know you're saying bar is the place where you get the pizza. What was the name of the bar where you got the cocktails? I think you already said it, but just to reiterate.
Oh, you're gonna love. Here's a further connection as well to us. So the name of the bar is called Ordinary.
Ordinary.
So
okay.
Ordinary is slightly newer, maybe 10-ish years old, and it was in a place that used to be called Richter's, which was Yale's most classic bar, and it closed at some point, and they took over. But our friend Justin Fornal, one of the 3 great Isla swimmers, which listeners may remember him from future episodes, the owner of
namely Great Isle of Swim.
What's that?
Namely Great Isle of Swim.
Namely Great Isle of Swim. But there was also the live podcast we did at Jubilee. Anyway, one of his best friends owns Ordinary Bar, and I discovered the bar through Justin. So nice little
awesome.
Full circle there.
Awesome.
Yep.
There you go. And then you collapsed at home and then woke up to a significant hangover.
Do you ever go to sleep drunk and just you fall asleep feeling as if you have to vomit, and then you dream about having to vomit?
Oh, that's bad. That's a bad sign, because invariably you then wake up covered in vomit.
So the good news is I was not. The bad news is Haida was. No, I'm joking.
I made sure to turn my head and cough.
Yeah, so that's it. Just A, what have I been up to? Watching my weight. B, going at full excess with your brother Nicola.
So what's interesting is I get labelled the most dangerous person in any town I find myself. And yet Jason was nowhere to be found in that story, and yet you made a host of mistakes. So significant mistakes.
I don't know if it's that it's Jason is the most dangerous person in town. I think it's when a Johnston is in town. I think Murray was your proxy.
There is something, though. You say this to me all the time when you and I are out and about, but I'm notorious. Funnily enough, something you never say.
That's true.
I'm notorious for getting the taste. Right, if I go along and I'm going through a period of not drinking, or like you, I've gone through the last maybe 10 days or so only sampling casks that are coming across the threshold. But if I'm out about, we're socializing, having a good time, enjoying the company of the one I'm with or the group I'm with, I really start to get the taste. And I'm like, that opening beer was delicious.
Oh, yeah.
And now, let's have a second one. And then, okay, that second one was delicious. Let's get some drams to go with these beers. Or let's pivot to cocktails. And let's do something a bit more dangerous.
You get so excited. You're all about the next step. Oh, what's next? Now what can we do? Yeah.
Absolutely. That to me is the taste, right? That hungering for something else to heighten the experience, take it to the next level. It's having some pizza and beer that then turns into, we could get some shorts, or I know a good cocktail bar around the corner. Like you got the taste. You were ramping it up. Like
Haida and I, the problem with a treat meal is that you look forward to it the whole week, and it's kind of like fasting. Whether you're doing it on a holiday like Yom Kippur, or you're just fasting to fast, you're looking forward to that meal afterwards, and you start thinking about it. So when treat meal came up, we pre-gamed with this was the first of 3 cocktails. We pre-gamed with a black tot daiquiri. That was our thing. And we're like, because here's the thing, Jason. Uber was our friend. We had an Uber come pick us up.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So we adulted.
Run it to the max. Absolutely.
Yeah, so, I had license.
I tell you, an occasion for me is the end of Passover. So when you've gone 8 days living on matzah, and there's been no French baguettes, there's been no sourdough, there's been no multigrain loaves, that first sandwich after Passover ends is orgasmic. It's just, it's 8 days. Like, it's not a year, it's not 8 years, it's 8 days.
Man.
And I just go, I forgot how good a sandwich can taste.
So, all right. So really quickly, because I feel as if this is important, because you brought up 3 different kinds of bread that all have their orgasmic qualities. A French baguette with that kind of like, you just squeeze it a little bit and it starts to crunch.
Absolutely.
Right? So you've got that. You can kind of toast it if you like.
Absolutely.
A proper San Francisco sourdough bread that kind of bites you back a little bit, like that. And then like a whole grain, like
I feel like we've entered your fever dreams now.
But my point is, like, what do you go like when people say,
can you put your hands where I can see them?
Like, what is your go-to, right? What's your desert sandwich? What's your desert bread? Of the 3, would you go for that baguette for the simplicity of it, or the multigrain for the complex flavors and textures?
No, I would. It's the third one you're about to name. It would be the sourdough, because sourdough is not a thing I'm eating on a regular basis, right? There's a lot of empty calories in a sourdough, and so whereas if I'm having a sandwich in the house, it is multigrain bread, and rather delicious multigrain bread at that. But a sourdough is a good treat.
Yeah.
Because you're having those empty calories and you're loving the sourness of it, that little bite back.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So then it's easier to not have that sourdough in the house.
One nation under barley that makes bread.
One nation under Joshua's fever dreams.
That's the other thing. It's been a month I haven't had bread.
Oh no, you don't have to tell us that, Joshua. We all picked up on that.
Wait, what kind of bread was it? Don't slow down. Don't leave out of details.
Yeah. Okay, you unsheathed the serrated knife. Okay, You've presented the loaf. I'm with you. Tell me, how did you stroke it? Just tell me. Okay, somebody get an ice water for Joshua
I feel like you
Hatton.
took this to a really weird place, Jason.
Dude, we've been listening to you for a fair few minutes here.
Okay.
Me and all the listeners.
All right, so with that said, turnabout is fair play. I haven't seen you in God knows how long. What's been going on in Jason's life? Talk to us about all the bread you've been eating.
Just tell me, where have you been? What have you eaten? And pray to God it was sandwiches. Pray to God. I tell you who is loving this segment is Chris Swede-Scott Hallstrom.
Oh, is he?
In Glasgow. He is a sandwich lover. He and I have cheeky wee sandwiches when we're together.
There you go.
Okay, so me. So where have I been? So I did a whistle stop West Coast jaunt.
That's right.
And so I mentioned this in our last little news segment when I talked about being in Boise, being in Moscow, doing a bit of tasting there, putting the Wolf Island Take 2 in front of people, the Copper Works. What wonderful tastings, getting in a bit of morel mushroom hunting.
Really? You didn't tell me that bit.
Yeah. We got out into the Idaho forests, did a bit of morel hunting. Not overly successful at the altitudes we were at. Okay. Idaho was experiencing a significant heat wave when I was there. And so this middle of May, their temperatures were mid-80s.
Oh, yeah.
So, getting around the 30 centigrade mark. Pretty hot, pretty warm out there. Getting into the forest was magnificent. The temperature dropped, 10, 15 degrees. So we went plodding. Oh my gosh, you talk about orgasmic food moments. we're out walking over the course of a couple of days. I probably covered maybe 25 miles just foraging.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So not just even a direct trail, but just meandering uphill, down dale, over fallen trees and through brush. It was really, really wonderful. And on the second day, the afternoon, Andrew, who I was with, along with good friend Uncle Carl, pulled out home dehydrated pineapple.
Ooh.
And I took a bite of that in the woods, and oh my gosh, the earth moved underneath me. It was magnificent.
Under my feet.
Exactly. That was playing. That was the soundtrack in my mind.
That's great.
As I was tasting that. Oh my God, it was amazing. So I currently have pineapple on my counter at home. I am intending to dehydrate some of my own pineapple for the next time I take a hike.
Mm-hmm.
And see if I can repeat that moment out in the wilderness. So that was that. Then I made it over to San Francisco. Got to discuss American single malt whiskey with Steve Hawley, president of the commission.
Beauty. Yep.
It was a dinner. It was cocktails. It was drinks. It was nosh. Together, it was getting the taste and things being a little bit fun in San Francisco, and then me walking home from the financial district through Chinatown to the apartment I was in, kindly loaned to me by my sister-in-law and her family. Okay. And I was walking home at it was an hour in the morning time, and I'm walking up these hills and there's not a soul on them, and I'm thinking, this is like walking home in Glasgow, right? Huh. You walk uphill, down dale, you take turns. Might have got myself a little bit lost by walking home using Waze. No real problem.
Waze?
Yeah, just for the funsies.
Interesting.
That's what I have on my phone, right? Shows you where roads are.
I guess
Shows you where you are.
I guess so.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and so people have asked me this since, like, oh, you were in San Francisco. How was it? Like, dangerous? Like, homeless people, challenge you at every turn? I was like, nope. There's a distinct zone that is a no-go zone at most hours of the day. But again, I was in the financial district. I was in Chinatown. Totally safe. Not an issue. You could have gone down the wharf very easily. No great issues. I will say I do have a conversation coming up in a future episode. It might be the next episode, might not be. I don't want to tie us down, but I speak with Thad Vogler, who at Bar Agricole. You made me think about a moment ago when you mentioned Murray taking on the Agricole rum. There you go. And I speak with Thad Vogler, who also wrote By the Smoke and the Smell, which I've highly recommended on this podcast many a time, and I speak with him and we talk about San Francisco and we do a little bit of history of San Francisco through his eyes, the way we did a previous history of DC through the eyes of Bill Thomas. And it's a tremendous conversation. And we talk a little bit about what's the housing crisis looking like, what's the homelessness crisis looking like, what's the pandemic done. So that was a wonderful, wonderful conversation there, but a whistle-stop tour in San Francisco. And then I closed out with a whistle-stop tour through LA, where I was in LA for less than 24 hours as well.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay.
Got to have a lunch with Gabby and her husband Chris of the Mixing Glass, who are in Orange County. It's always a treat to see them and catch up with them. And I was meant to be meeting with our very own Greg Swartz of the Water of Life film that we reference many, many times.
Many times.
And he unfortunately got very ill, and we had to cancel our meeting. And I changed my flight. And I flew home early, and LA came to a very quick end. I will say just very quickly. the reason my brother's in the country, the reason my mother's in the country, the reason I've also been very busy and my wife is beyond belief busy is when this episode drops later in this week, we will have a bar mitzvah. And our 13-year-old will be called to the Torah, and you will be in town, and Haida will be in town, and we will blow the bloody doors off. I say, as you put on your Michael Caine glasses, that's going to be a time as well. And the date you gave, you're ending this Sunday, so you will be out of the fasting and into the feasting again. And we will endeavour to put £6 back on you.
So it looks like we may be carrying this on for a further 11 months.
Well, we look forward to being your cheat meal of the weekend.
Oh, no. Our treat meal, yes, indeed. I'm enjoying it and seeing the results. When you set out to lose weight and you see the results, it's infectious, or at least for me, it's infectious. So we may carry on with this, and I think I'm just going to do my best to live a healthier life. Jason, guess what's going to happen later this year?
I have heard by way of this podcast that you will be turning 50.
The big 50. I'm not getting any younger. And so I think eating more healthier, running, just taking care of myself is a thing I got to be doing.
Well, as far as transitions go, let me bring in somebody at this point who is known for their running by way of their Instagram account.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. It's a transition for sure. It's a bit tortured, but I see the connection.
I don't think this is tortured in the slightest. I think this is a delightful moment to move beyond bread and sandwich related orgasms to terroir. And there's no better way than to get onto terroir than bringing in Anna Hinz of Westland fame. And she sent us a text that I said, do you mind if I read on the podcast? And she said, please do. And she said, as long as you don't think it sounds too rambly or discombobulated. And I said, you have listened to Joshua, right?
Whoa!
To which,
you meant to say Joshua and me. Sorry.
To which she said, I was going to make that joke and then opted not to. So...
see, someone is the better person. So just really quickly before you go and read that,
not to be rambling,
but I just want to say really quickly, when we launched season 7, we said we were going to set out to talk about agriculture more, to talk about climate more, of which the idea of terroir is connected to. So the fact that we're continuing this theme and allowing ourselves the time to do it, I'm happy we're doing. And more importantly, between Anna Hinz and Christopher, and I know we've got Christopher Sebastian, that is, and I know we have some other things coming in for this episode. I'm thankful that it's not just us that are keeping ourselves on task, but people are reaching out to us to keep us on task too. So just a really quick thank you to the people who support us.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually, once you hear this text, it will make you feel good about what we're endeavoring to do here.
Good.
So Anna writes, I'm just kind of quietly scrolling to see if I need to add more of our conversation, but I think I can leave this as it is. So Anna writes, you should know that this podcast episode, and she is referring to the Jeff Bloom Maltster episode, that if anyone hasn't caught it, we do highly recommend. It really has spurred a lot of conversation. You should know that this podcast episode has sparked a lengthy and fantastic discussion/debate with a distiller friend of mine about terroir. We're going back and forth about the wine explanation of terroir, parenthetical comment from Anna, and I would say Marc Regnier's understanding, close parenthetical comment.
All right. Marc Regnier of Waterford, previously of Bruichladdich. Yeah.
Exactly. Versus the more quote-unquote sense of place usage that's more common in the whiskey world that includes people, environment, and equipment. She goes on, and then also what's discernible or even useful to the consumer, especially without clear research for regionality, etc. And then she concludes, basically, please keep on digging into this topic, because I look forward to seeing how this develops in our industry.
Wow. That's a cool email. Or text, I should say. Very cool text.
Isn't that a cracker? And it really opened my eyes to a new angle, which is we are all discussing Marc Regnier's conception of terroir. And this isn't, and the reason that I kept this name in here is this is in no way to throw Marc under the bus here. This is just to say he started this conversation, clearly at Bruichladdich, transferred it over to Waterford. And we need to be careful that as we go down a discussion of terroir, we're not simply using a single perspective on that term. And it's worth developing what do we in whiskey mean when we use terroir, and what do we mean by terroir in wine, even when we talk about it in wine. And I had a much lengthier conversation with Ollie Chilton at Elixir, the head blender at Elixir, over this. We'd actually connected to talk about covering the blind samples of Macbeth that we'll get to later in this episode as well. We'd actually connected on that front, and he said, but first I want to talk to you about your Maltster episode, which he loved as well.
Oh, that's great.
And so I got him to commit some words as well. So we'll circle back to Ollie in a minute. But when listeners hear me pick up this Marc Regnier thread, it's coming from Anna here. And it was reiterated in my conversations with Ollie.
I like how she touched on that second perspective of terroir about people, because I think it's very important. You could have a distillery in a place and say, yeah, but I want to produce this sort of spirit, and how you ferment, how you distill, and a number of other things, even how you mash, will change that style. Like if you wanted to, you could create a quote-unquote lowland style on Islay if you wanted to. Because
if you wanted to.
Because people are involved. And what do you want to do? So there's two sides to this story, maybe more than two sides to the terroir story here.
Oh, it's definitely not a duality. But go on to the rest of Seabass there, because you're starting to tease out things in your comments there that will echo in Ollie and what I had Ollie put keys to keyboard, or fingers to keyboard.
So back to Seabass, and he says, I wanted to chime in on your terroir conversation you had post the Jeff Bloom, Amanda Beckwith interview, which was incredibly fascinating, by the way.
Awesome.
Yes, thank you. Towards the end, as you were debriefing the conversation amongst yourselves, it turned to the way that Jeff talked about the differences in spirits, beer, and wine. I think, and that's all capital letters, I think I understood it slightly differently than you did, Joshua, but I was hoping to get your thoughts on it. Continues, it seems to me that Jeff was saying that wine specifically was a simpler product in the way that it was produced, which then led to more direct connection between the raw ingredients and the finished product. This in turn leads to a more easily definable terroir from a standard human sensory perspective rather than needing to get down to the molecular level in a lab or directly manufactured side-by-side comparisons to see what differences are in existence. So my takeaway was that there's a difference in all those different categories, but wine gets the biggest shine for terroir because its production process allows for us humans to most clearly see the connection between place and the end product. Hence, the common trope of a sommelier being able to identify a standalone glass of wine down to the region, producer, year, etc. Do you think that that's a good way to look at it? And then just really quickly, he closes it up saying, loved how he said that at the end of the day, the grain does make a difference, being grown from the ground. And the way he talked about flavor inputs, I thought was interesting and bears some reflection upon. Excited to hear your thoughts and cheers. So. The way Seabass talked about it was the way I had hoped Jeff was talking about it, but it didn't seem immediately apparent to me upon first listen. So now it's clear that maybe in my listen I saw a squirrel or a shiny quarter, and I maybe missed some of the nuance of what he was trying to say, because I think that's spot on. There's far less human intervention when it comes to producing wine. You have to do less to the grapes to create a wine, and therefore the connection to terroir is just that much more immediate and apparent.
And that's what I was trying to convey in my response to you in that portion of the podcast was I didn't think you were quite spot on with it, but it was okay, where's the textual evidence there? And listeners who are listening to interview and then our discussion have an immediacy there that is quite useful. I did actually check with a couple of people to say, I know that I was kind of going off memory in my response to your interpretation of Jeff. Yeah. And did they think I was remembering it correctly? And I did have a couple of people say, yeah, I think the way you responded to Joshua was correct, given what Jeff had covered in the interview. So,
not to create an excuse here, but sometimes my first listen of an episode or an interview is simply during the editing process, and I'm paying more attention to what ums and ahs need to be deleted, or if someone says, oh, you know what, that's not how I meant to say it. Can we rewind? And then I adjust those things. And so my point is, my first and only listen was during the editing process of it, and so I need to go back and really give it that full listen, because it's obvious I missed.
And that's
exactly
the point, right?
Right? Yeah.
That's exactly, and that's where the listeners driving in a car or riding a bus or out for a run with AirPods in or earbuds in, right? There's something very direct there when you're listening, and you know, not to get too inside baseball, but it's the same for me in conducting an interview.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm listening to what's being said. I'm thinking about where to pivot the interview. I'm also asking myself that question, okay, is this going to work for the listener? Is this what they want to be hearing? Do I need to get this person off of this topic and onto another topic?
Yeah.
And so there's a bit of plate spinning going on. And so sometimes I envy the listener that opportunity to listen in an intimate fashion.
Yeah.
But again, somebody else saying, thanks for continuing this chat. Thanks for making this a topic of consideration. is also wonderful to hear. So let me springboard, because there's some things I'm not saying right now that I would like to say, but let me springboard over to Ollie here, who was kind enough after a discussion to actually put thoughts on digital paper.
All right. Is this in a PDF? Perhaps?
Is this a PDF? He did send... no, it's not. I turned it into a PDF. Yes, I was thinking he sent me a PDF, but he didn't. What a monster. What a monster. Okay, so he says, given conversation last night, here are my brief thoughts on digital paper. As stated in your last interview, there is little doubt that barley variety, growing conditions, etc., can all have an impact on flavour in the end spirit. Mm-hmm. The question from me is, should it? The whisky interpretation of terroir seems to only revolve around the grape and its growing condition, where my understanding of the French meaning is more nuanced and involves the grower and how the grower is working with the changing conditions to create their interpretation of the best wine in any given growing year. It is an ever-changing feast that celebrates the changing environment and the changing culture. Just as a very quick aside between you and me, Joshua, I think this is something Jeff Bloom has introduced to our discussion of terroir. Mm-hmm. In that interview, which was really a tour of the malting facility, but in that conversation, he's busy saying, I need to pay attention to the batch of grain that comes in my door. Mm-hmm. I cannot just apply standard industrial processes to every single batch. Yes. Because depending on climate, depending on recent conditions before it was harvested, this different grain comes in different ways and with different needs. And so I thought that was a wonderful aspect of this
Something
conversation.
You never even thought about, right? You just...
Exactly.
Grain comes in, malted grain goes out, and that's all you think. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the other part, and I think this is echoed in some of Anna and in some of Seabass here, is even if terroir is present, how do you measure that? Right? And Jeff opened the door to that conversation as well. Yeah. And we've seen that go through Anna and Seabass. And now we've got Ollie saying, okay, so why are we talking terroir? Why is this a useful conversation, right? And he's conceding all of the points and saying, okay, if I concede there's this and that and the next thing, well, why is this important? So let's continue here. Let's continue. Okay. I just wanted to draw those couple of aspects that I think Jeff opened the door of. Okay. So Ollie continues in the next paragraph. Where whiskey differs for me is that it has always been a distinctly British take on how to use natural materials. That is, how do we manipulate these ingredients to get the desired consistent outcome, parentheses, flavours, style and yield, close parentheses. There is, for me, a large amount of beauty in this, as you are taking ever-changing variables and trying to use your understanding to achieve the same result. Surely this is just as special as celebrating the difference from year to year. Indeed, even the maltster is part of this, using their machinery to reduce down the variables for the brewer-distiller and giving them ingredients that are easier to manipulate. What he and I have been talking about in our conversation was exactly, and again, that moment where I put myself on the line, where Jeff is talking about increasing enzymes, right? Not increasing sugar, increasing enzyme content. that allows the unlocking of the sugars that then go forth into fermentation and distillation.
Yep.
And so here's Ollie saying the distiller doesn't just get a neutral grain from the ground that gets treated, as you just said a moment ago, in the front door, out the back door, right?
Yeah.
Which serves the field to the distiller, right? The maltster is doing something with his or her craft that is presenting a particular palate to the distiller and then saying, go forth and do your thing here.
Yeah. Yep.
It's not, to Ollie's mind, capture the field or the growing conditions. It's provide me with a palette of options in using this malted barley. So,
yeah,
to fill in that gap there.
I love it. It's interesting that he's. Oh, go ahead.
So I've got two more paragraphs.
Yep, go ahead. Oh,
so I don't know if you want to make your point now or after the two.
I'll just really quickly say this. No, you know what? Go ahead. You read.
So let me just get through two more paragraphs here, and then we can circle back to chat.
Yeah.
Ollie writes, there is room in this broad whisky world to take a more French approach to terroir and whisky. And I would say companies like Dornoch Distillery do this incredibly well, allowing each stillman to choose the cut they feel celebrate the inputs, barley, yeast, water, in the best way possible. In a small, high-end scale, this works incredibly well, and I will admit that I buy and drink whisky from Dornoch Distillery for this reason.
Oh, wow. Okay.
However, and I think we know where he might be going here. However, I am not a regular whisky customer. And this echoes the comment you and I were making in Extra about the Diageo Distillers editions, right? It feels like they might not be getting made for us and the type of drinking we do, the type of buying we do, the type of sharing we do. That might not be our sandbox. So Ollie says, however, I am not a regular whisky customer, and I don't believe you can apply this on a massive industrial scale, as your customer will never know what they are buying. And we are all here to make a drink, not just to celebrate a school of philosophy. Most customers want to know that the bottle they spend their hard-earned cash on, a phrase we've said for 2 decades, decade and a half, a bottle they spend their hard-earned cash on is something they will enjoy because it tastes good. And the fact that Scotch whisky can consistently produce so many different styles from an incredible array of variables is its true strength. Love to you all, Ollie.
So fantastic. You know, it's funny. Throughout your entire reading, I had a comment that I've been wanting to make, and then he tied it up in a bow for me. It's just so perfect. The fact that he concedes terroir is a thing, both from nature and from human intervention. And the fact that it doesn't need to be part of the conversation is kind of a cool thing because of what Scotch whiskey is already doing. It's already creating the various different styles through spirit, through wood, through yeast, through the machinery. Whether you talk about it or not, it's a happening. And so I like that idea. I like that it's being brought back to the idea of a sense of place, of people, right? We bring up Dave Broom's book, his newer book often, right?
Often. Sitting right next to me right now.
And the fact that you like talking about it is almost exhausting. You know?
Right. And so my take is, if you're going to talk about it, why? So to talk about terroir missing, not being present in a Diageo single malt, one could argue is to miss the point. One listening to a presentation on why terroir is in Ardnamurchan, is in Dornoch Distillery, is in Kilhoma 100% Islay.
Yeah.
There is a place for it. But I think the takeaway is, just because you're not talking about terroir doesn't mean you're making a mistake.
Yeah.
Right. And I wonder if part of this terroir conversation is that everybody should be talking about terroir, and perhaps that is mistaken. Right. Mm-hmm. There's a time and a place for it, and if you're going to discuss it, have a meaningful discussion about it. Don't just throw it in because we're seeing the papification of terroir.
Everything's getting papified, Jason. Everything.
Listen, I don't necessarily want to stop this conversation, but I do want to pour a dram. I'm getting thirsty as we're sitting talking, and this water has stopped doing it for me. And all of this talk of terroir and process and variables and beauty. I will say this, and this was a takeaway from my conversation with Ollie, as well as the words he committed to digital paper, which is, and I just put this out there for our listeners to consider. We don't need to discuss this here and now.
Okay.
Ollie posits that wine production is an art and whiskey production is a craft. And if you go back into your Greek definitions, it will shed more light on what that could potentially mean.
Man, it kills me that you brought that up and we can't really talk about it right now because it's such a interesting way to think about that and what is art and what is craft and is craft art. And okay. All right. So, yeah.
Well, let me just say this. If it has quickly filled up your brain, we have just now taken up the rest of Foster's Day, because this is Foster's world and we're just living in it. He is almost certainly going to send in an email about art and craft, and I look forward to reading it. And so you and I can further our conversation then. I want to get onto this next segment. When I told Tamara the window that you and I had for recording today, she said, "Really, you're going to be done in a tight 2 hours when the two of you are just sitting talking to each other?" And I said, "Yes, we will be." And now I'm watching the clock on the wall and I'm thinking, yeah, we've been enjoying ourselves
for a while. So two things here. So for the listener, right, that this episode's a 3-parter, right? It's a catch-up. It's a 4-parter, right? It's reading emails. It's a catch-up because we haven't seen each other in a while. And we always do sort of a summer catch-up. I think this seems to happen every year. There's a period of time where we just don't see each other, and it's nice to catch up. So emails,
100%.
Catch-up, a discussion of terroir, that's 3. And now the 4th is this.
Is 4th mustard?
It's Colonel Mustard in the apothecary with the butt plug.
Oh, I had him with the hot dog. Damn it.
You freeze it, it could be used similarly. Anyway, so...
Duly noted.
So now we're in the 4th part of this episode, and back to Ollie Chilton. He was kind enough to pack us up some samples of this Macbeth series that we're going to be talking over the course of a few episodes, and we've got 8 of 9 samples in front of us. We're not going to taste through all 8 today, but we're going to focus on 2. Jason, is there anything else you wanted to say about the Macbeth series, about what we're going to do before we actually pour? And I also need to know which ones I'm pouring. I don't know which ones I'm pouring.
So the samples were already randomized in coming our way. So we are starting with, to be clear for the reader, they are numbered 1 through 8. And we are beginning with numbers 1 and 2.
That makes sense. Yep, that makes sense.
It does. It makes a whole world of sense. I wanted to ask you a question, Joshua, which for myself and Jess, growing up in the UK and growing up with the stories of Roald Dahl, and I mean specifically the children's stories that have such delicious horror and terror in them for children.
Yeah.
We also grew up with the Quentin Blake illustrations within those short children's novels. And I'm curious if the Quentin Blake illustrations came to America, and if you too grew up with Roald Dahl and his stories.
In the UK, you guys had Roald Dahl stories. In the US, we had Maurice Sendak, right? Where the Wild Things Are.
Indeed, yeah, absolutely.
And we had Dr. Seuss, right?
Indeed.
The idea of a child's story in the US that are so incredibly vicious and harsh did not... Like, I mean, there's a reason in Germany, how do you celebrate Christmas? It's all about Krampus. It's not Santa Claus. It's not Saint Nick. It's Krampus. And so here in the U.S., it's 2023. There's still people wanting to ban books.
Yeah.
Right? We have a prudish problem here in the US, and so to answer your question, no, we did not have that.
So one of the vital components of this series, a collaboration between Livingston, a design house, and Sir Quentin Blake and Elixir, is the labels, right?
Yeah.
And it's Quentin Blake reimagining characters from Macbeth as birds in his inimitable style. And I see these labels and they transport me right back to my childhood and growing up with Quentin Blake and the books that I then read to my kids, because Roald Dahl meant so much to me and the Quentin Blake illustrations meant so much to me. So that is a key aspect. And in this conflab with Ollie, he was saying, as a fellow, Brit, a gentleman from England, he grew up with all this. He's passing this on to his kids.
Yeah.
And it's now with this series, people are being like, and Quentin Blake, and why has he scribbled this? And, why is it a bird? And so it's like, oh gosh, that's a vital component for so many people in the UK. Yeah. So the flavors go beyond that, and the flavors of whiskies were brought about from, or the inspiration came about from, the characters in Macbeth. This is the first of 3 series. They're calling this Act 1.
Okay.
8 characters have been defined, and our challenge, as presented by Ollie, is to identify the first couple of characters based on the flavours of the whiskies we have before us. The 8 characters who they have put out are Lady Macduff, Menteith, Angus, First Ghost, First Witch, First Murderer, Satan, spelled Seyton, and the Bloody Sergeant. And from those 8, Joshua...
Can you say that in a Michael Caine accent? The Bloody Sergeant. It's a bloody sergeant. Sorry, continue.
To be clear, he appears in the very beginning of the play and is covered in blood. He then proceeds to deliver his message and die. So there you go. A classic Shakespearean opening. So I'm gonna feed you a little bit here as we go. I'm gonna make your task much, much more simple, Joshua, which is as you put your nose into sample number one, what strikes you?
So one thing I will say as I'm nosing this just really quickly is I did do a little bit of homework before this. As you know, Denzel Washington recently put out a movie. So I watched Training Day last night in preparation of this just to get, accustomed to the characters.
I will say for our listeners, if you either haven't read Macbeth in a long time or want to see a really formidable modern adaptation, the Denzel Washington Macbeth is written for the screen and directed by Joel Cohen and is well worth your time. Wow. Absolutely delightful. So that recommendation came from Ollie. I think you and I, Joshua, had said we had it on our watch list for a long time, and this was the perfect impetus to fire it up. I'm glad that you got to enjoy Training Day. So nosing number one.
It's there are two things happening at the same time. There's that sort of that pickly earthiness that you sometimes get from like a Croftingea or a Lechig, where it's just that. Is it pickly? Is it slightly sulfury? Is it earthy? It's living in that world, that very pleasant world, and it's being so wonderfully balanced out by this floral component. It's just like right begonias or something. Yeah, it's really pretty. Yeah,
there's unmistakable smoke. I love your observation of the pickling that's happening in here, but then that brightness, is it floral? It's more floral than citrus.
It's floral. It is an orange jujube, which has that very slight hint of floral soap going, without being soapy, right? But do you know that floral quality that hand soap can have, mixed with a sweetness? That's what orange jujubes taste like to me, and I'm getting that on the nose.
Only because you said the S word a second ago in passing.
Did I say smooth? I didn't say smooth.
Would you describe a soapiness to the experience? And this is just an opportunity to clarify, since you introduced the word a moment ago.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it soapy. I would call this the comfort that soft soap, hand soap brought me in the mid-'80s when I used to stay over my grandparents' house on Saturdays and Sundays. And there's just something so nice about the way their bathroom smelled, in part because of that. And it was this sweet floral scent that simply came from the soap. And so I'm connecting it to that that memory. It's just how my brain works there.
Pick up number two, and while you're giving number two a little sniff, I will say in the press release that goes with this, they have actually broken down this first act, or even all the acts. There will be a ghost series within the three releases. There will be a House of Thane series within this larger overarching, and there will be carryovers in themes as they go through this. The Ghost series will actually come from closed distilleries. the Witch series, I did read this in the press release, goes down a peated path. And what's kind of got me, and the reason I bring this up is I'm getting a peated path from the first 2 blind samples. And I know from the press release that one of those might encapsulate the witch. You also think of the cauldron, and you think of, toil and trouble, and you think about the ingredient list, and you think about outdoors and smoky fires. Like when we were first presented with this challenge, I wondered if the witch might be one of the easier to identify, and then lesser characters like Angus, like Satan, Seyton, might be more difficult to identify. So I know we're not quite into the guessing stage, and I will reiterate the characters we're thinking of, but I can't not think witch with number 2.
So I can't not think it either. This almost feels like an older, softer, obviously just really quickly for the listeners here, right? Sample number 1 was a very light bright color. I would almost say white gold, right? It's very pale. Where the second one seems to have some sort of a sherry or wine cask component going on. It almost seems like an older sherry version of what happened in the first, because there is the pickly funky smokiness turned into an earthy funky smokiness, but it's much more subdued by comparison, which makes me think some of that may have gotten aged out in a sherry cask a little bit, and it's a bit more integrated in the overall. Again, I'm just nosing it. I haven't tasted it yet, but I feel as if we're in the same silo here. We're just 2 very different characters that have some sort of a connection.
Interesting. I am going through the tasting notes as created by Dave Broom and scanning. The Lady Macduff opens a gentleness of manner and vulnerability is what you find on and I've already stopped reading, right? That's none of these 2. That's not these characters.
Yeah, there's no vulnerability happening here. No.
Right. I'm moving on to Menteith. Maturity brings forth a relaxed air. This is now a life of ermine, the satisfaction of sweetmeats and spices, fruits and flowers. Yet for all the damask rose and sandalwood, at the core lurks a hint of smoke. Comfort pushed aside and darkness embraced, the muscles flex anew, power grows, it will act.
Wow, that sounds like number 2 right here.
That's in a wheelhouse, right? That's in a wheelhouse. Angus, who is again somewhat of a minor character, belongs in the House of Thane. Quietness can be an asset. I'm not sure I would consider either of these quiet. Those who stand in the shadows are the silent witnesses. Much has been seen, and any sweetness which has been gathered in will be balanced by the darker acts of war. Plotted under paraffin light, there is spice in the tales told. I don't think that's either of these 2.
But it's kind of difficult to get there from the tasting notes alone, only because of the order in which we're nosing and tasting these. Because I guarantee number 2 would smell and taste different if we led with it. The first whiskey was so incredibly forceful with its funky, pickly, floral quality that when I first poured sample number 2, it was quieter, it was softer, and it did seem to, right?
Oh, that's interesting. You said that wasn't my experience at all.
Oh, interesting.
I found it to be large and smoky and threatening the way the witches are threatening, right?
Yeah,
Which is, they're not Freddy Krueger stabbing you in your dreams, right? They're haunting and they're around the periphery and they're setting you up. You know, if you see, you know, Macbeth's descent into madness through his conversations with the witches, right? I think that's exactly what number 2 is doing, right? So I think number 2 is remarkable.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. My only point is, after the first one, it took me a little bit to dig into the second one because by comparison, upon first blush, the second whiskey wasn't jumping out at me, but the more time I spend with it, and you know, I always try to write my nose just like you do. You know, you give your arm a smell or something like that, and it resets your nose. That's when all of the things we're talking about jumps out.
So yeah, I'm skipping on a few characters here because we're talking about the witch so much. I do want to see what is written for the witch here. We have there on the little promontory, a peat fire smoulders by a soot-blackened cave. Ooh. Guttering light, tattered oilcloth, a weird medicine swirling in the cauldron, a promise, a contract, the draw of a world of smoke and tar, fish livers, and enveloping violet night.
Violet or violent?
And so violet night for the colour of the sky rather than the...
So as I was nosing this second one, I thought for a second that there was a hint of lavender. Just a hint. And then when you said violet, I'm like, okay, floral component maybe. So the character that you're just describing, is that the one that was played by Ethan Hawke in Training Day?
You are trouble, Mr. Hatton. You are trouble.
So can I taste this? Am I allowed to give it a wee sipperoo?
You can lead a horticulture, but you can't make her learn Shakespeare.
Or him.
I won't. So, sip. Sorry, I've been sipping like crazy.
I didn't know you've been sipping. I thought I would break some cardinal rule here.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't taste this without sipping. Gosh.
Oh man. Whatever character whiskey number 2 is, that's a delicious character. Oh, it just grabs you by the taste buds. Most of the flavors are sort of center palate and back. The tip of the palate, you're not getting a lot, so there's not a lot of like, I usually get sour kind of things at the tip of my palate, or either like very high sweetness or sour things at the tip. This is all thick sweetness and earthiness and heaviness, but so balanced, so purposeful. This is a purpose-driven whiskey here. I love what it's doing.
The question is, as I'm scanning through some of these other flavor notes to identify a character through a flavor profile, I'm seeing wood smoke and other smoke mentioned in a couple of other places. We've got First Murderer, pallid with a reek of wood smoke and tallow candles, salt sweat on the brow, lean shanked yet muscular, downtrodden, dismissed and angry, a denizen of the darkest taverns. For a few coins as night falls, a throat will feel its bite, a child will die. money runs thicker than blood.
Wow. Those are tasting
notes? Does that seem
notes?
like sample one?
No.
Does that seem like sample one?
That does not. No. Again, I'm back. I'm in the same wheelhouse as you. There's witches. There's witches a brune. At least with number two. With number one.
I'm committed. Do you want to be committed with me? Do we want to say which is number two?
Which is number two? Yeah.
Right.
WITCH.
Let's commit to the sandwich.
What kind of bread?
So
let me
read you this then, because there's another place where smoke is mentioned. Now, I'm locked in on two. I want to try and work out one. Pale-faced, sleeping on straw, the smoke wreathes around, cloaking the body in suspicions of evil. This is the curse of the indentured servant. At the beck and call of the master, the spirit pulled in opposite directions. As the reek strengthens, so the memories of an earlier, riper life diminish. That is Satan, Seyton, who is essentially manservant, indentured servant to Macbeth. I might be reading far too much into this, but see this sleeping on straw and you identifying the colour of this as straw or white gold.
Yeah, but there's even across the palette, it's really pretty. That floral component just really pops for me. The smoke is subdued. There's a pretty quality to it, and almost like innocence to it. Is there anything that ties itself to like a innocence, Pollyanna?
It's not the Bloody Sergeant.
Okay.
There's Satan that I just read to you.
Yeah.
The first murderer is the one I read to you with a reek of wood smoke and tallow candles. The first witch is the one we're committing to sample number two. First ghost is dismissed too easily, the eyes move away, daring to doubt the spirit. Gold glitters on the helm, the voice soft but persistent, the execution firm. Resist disbelief for sweet reward, or regret will haunt you. Angus is quietness can be an asset, and I do not think number one is quietness in any way. I'm back to Menteith here. Yeah. Maturity brings forth a relaxed air. Is this mature or relaxed?
No.
This is now a life of ermine, the satisfaction of sweet meats and spices, fruits and flowers. I'm going to a little bit of that flower component, yet for all the damask rose and sandalwood at the core looks a hint of smoke. Comforts pushed aside and darkness embraced, the muscles flex anew, power grows. And then the Lady Macduff is a gentleness of manner and vulnerability. So it's not Lady Macduff.
What was the one before Lady Macduff?
That gives us, that's Menteith.
I'm thinking this might be Mantooth.
MEN. It does. I don't know if it fits entirely. And this maturity brings forth a relaxed air.
So do me a favor. Read to me again the ghost.
Yes. Dismissed too easily, the eyes move away, daring to doubt the spirit. Gold glitters on the helm, the voice soft but persistent, the execution firm. Resist disbelief for sweet reward, or regret will haunt you.
This is Ghost. Ghost. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's some hints there. You know, when you resist disbelief, you smell like, oof, God, am I going to like this? But then you taste it, and then everything makes sense. Everything sort of comes together.
So I have one final component for you, and then we'll get to a reveal.
Okay.
The Ghost series is coming from closed distilleries.
So that one has me doubting, which this is it seems a younger spirit. So, okay.
Because that got us away from Menteith, which was maturity and relaxed. I don't think it is.
Okay, so I appreciate that clarification, because I had thought that a future Ghost series was going to focus on closed and not necessarily this one. So through all three acts. Each of these three acts has series within. So if you didn't want to do the full Macbeth series, you could still do a series within and line up some offerings. So let me go through this for you, Joshua. So Lady Macduff is out. Menteith seems to be out, although there were some overlaps there. Angus is out. First Ghost, we think the flavour profile aligns, but if it's a closed distillery, we might have run into a bit of trouble. Yeah. First Witch, we're attaching to number two. Yeah. First Murderer. Oh, what's the First Murderer again?
Yeah. First Murderer, pallid, with a reek of wood smoke and tallow candles. Salt sweat on the brow. Lean-shanked yet muscular, downtrodden, dismissed and angry, a denizen of the darkest taverns. Yeah. For a few coins, as night falls, a throat will feel its bite, a child will die, money runs thicker than blood.
It's the idea of darkness.
There are parts of that.
Right? It makes sense until darkness is discussed. Right. Color aside, the bright floral quality to this makes me feel otherwise. So, okay, so that was, who was this again? That was
First Murderer.
First Murderer, and who's left?
So that leaves us Satan and Bloody Sergeant.
We know it's not Bloody Sergeant.
We got rid of Bloody Sergeant, right?
Okay, and I'm sorry, read Satan one last time.
Yep, absolutely. Pale-faced, sleeping on straw. Okay. The smoke wreathes around, cloaking the body in suspicions of evil. This is the curse of the indentured servant, at the beck and call of the master, the spirit pulled in opposite directions. As the reek strengthens, so the memories of an earlier, riper life diminish.
That's it. That's it. What was the first thing I said about this? It's equally pickly and floral. And he talked about that those two components, those opposing components.
Both innocent and guilty.
Yeah. And that's Satan? Satan?
Yeah. Seyton.
So I think we've got Satan for number one, and I think we've got the First Witch for number two.
Okay. I will say to listeners, future samplings will be shorter than this. We gave this its due course to talk thoroughly. We've got 8 full characters that we're talking about here. We have indulged quite greatly, but so much fun. And honestly, if you watch the recent Denzel Washington, it's so much fun piecing the characters to the flavour profiles to what you're watching on screen. It really is a ton of fun. So even if the Quentin Blake illustrations don't work for you in your culture, the Shakespeare, the Macbeth, the characters, the Joel Cohen, for heaven's sakes. There is one point at which Macbeth says, "Fuck it, Satan, let's go bowling." And so that is clear in that moment. So, okay, are we ready? Let me see. Where have I hidden the grand reveal? Ollie went to great pains to save an email as a PDF so that I could save the PDF reveal without opening it. So here is the opening of the PDF.
Okay.
Here it comes, Joshua. Double clicking.
God, what if we're wrong on both? I kind of feel like we're not, but, here we are anyway. Let's see. Did we win? Did we win a prize?
That's funny. It opened up my mail despite being saved to my desktop, so I couldn't find it to begin with. And then I went hunting for it. So here's the thing. So number 2, we were so certain in it the whole way. It is First Witch.
Oh, it is First Witch. Oh, God. Jeez, Jason, you can't lead up. You can't. I guess you can. But
let me tell you what First Witch is.
Oh, can I make a guess? I feel as if it's
go crazy.
I feel as if it's potentially an older Lichig, some sort of a subdued Lichig.
Okay. The first of 4 heavily peated single malts chosen to portray the Weird Sisters in Livingston's Macbeth series. As the witches remain unnamed in the original text, bottler Elixir Distillers has chosen to keep the origin of this whiskey mysterious on the label.
Okay.
However, they have hinted that Pedro Jimenez casks used to mature the First Witch were filled at a distillery on Isla's Kildalton coast.
Oh, right.
This is one of 1,800 bottles.
I'm going to need one of them.
At 51.7%. The product page at the Whisky Exchange titles this Ardbeg 19-year-old.
Wow.
£550 a bottle.
You know what? Such is the whiskey world. Well, you know what? Especially with Ardbeg, that's been the whiskey world for a good long time. Yeah, I guess you can't knock that price.
Right.
There you go.
Right, $550, one of 1,800, and if you want to work on your witch series, that is the first one.
Wow. Excellent. Yep.
It's unbelievably good, and you and I have had a history of tasting whiskies in a price vacuum, and we say, is it good? Would we drink the shit out of it? And I would 100% drink the shit out of that. Will I own a bottle? No, I will not.
No.
But holy macaroni, is it
excellent.
Incredibly drinkable.
Yeah.
I would go so far as, based on our last extra episode, I would go so far as to call it a June drinker.
I got a text from Seabass last week or something, and he's just like he's in stitches over the idea of $1,800 June drinkers.
It's the world we live in. Okay, so that is number 2 in the books. Number 1, sample number 1.
Yeah.
Satan.
Is it? Are you kidding me? We got it.
We did our due diligence there. We really went round all the doors to get that one. And so here again is from the product page at the Whisky Exchange. Macbeth's loyal armourer, imagined as a fresh herbaceous single malt from blank. Maturation in casks previously filled with heavily peated Islay whiskey gives an extra layer of smokiness to this characteristically mineral make. Expect pine needles, woody herbs, and a lingering note of chocolate mint. This bottling is one of 10 whiskies chosen to portray Macbeth's household. So my question to you, Joshua, I will tell you, this is the largest outturn in number 1. This is 3,200 bottles. Wow. The question is, what distillery do you think?
If you had not mentioned matured in the Laphroaig casks. I would have said Loch Lomond and likely their Croft and Gaea or Inchfad Spirit, right? I mean, it's that style.
Yeah, you know exactly who this is.
It's Ardmore. It's got to be Ardmore. Yeah.
You want to hazard an age, since we were talking about age all the way through our tasting on it?
Probably 12 to 13.
12 years old.
There you go. Yep.
And this is £100 at 52.5%.
Now that, I think, is an actual June drinker.
Right? An actual one. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Those are two crackers to open on. That's, it's £100, June drinker. Playing the role of Satan, Seyton, that witch is
remarkable.
I would take chances crossing a busy street in traffic to get to the other side to drink that. That is phenomenal.
It's like human Frogger, basically.
And that's exactly what was in my head. Human Frogger. For the first witch. I think that encapsulates the character so well. Satan's a tricky one because he is so minor. He is the indentured servant. He does play a secondary role. I wonder if one could make the argument that Ardmore plays a secondary role to Laphroaig.
That makes sense. That's very interesting.
That was cracking. I will say as we go into another couple of these, we will bring Jess in as well. She is sitting in Glasgow with her own samples.
Yes, good.
And so we will further this conversation. But that's 2 down, 6 to go. We can also tell the listeners we will not be tasting the King Duncan bottling, which was a 56-year-old Glen Grant that will run £10,000 a bottle. So,
yeah, Ollie loves us. He just doesn't love us that much.
Well, Ollie loves us. So Kinder can take us or leave us.
That's it. No, in all seriousness, what an absolute treat. To be given these samples and to go through them. And it's back to us having some fun with whiskey. I know, exactly. Us doing the blind barrels stuff. Speaking of Christopher Sebastian. And speaking of, yes.
Did yours come in?
Yeah. So we have another set of 4 blind barrel samples we're going to be doing. So this is us. People have asked us, do more tasting notes, get more whiskey flavors going on in your conversation. So here we are. So huge thanks to Ollie for thinking of us for this, because these are really incredibly special whiskeys that samples shouldn't go to everyone, and the fact that they've come to us feels great. Yep.
It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. The fact that it's been nice to kind of dust off the Shakespeare muscle memory. You go into that Joel Coen Denzel Washington Macbeth, in the first few minutes it's kind of like, and I remember having the same emotion in school, like, I don't know if I can do this. How long is this? You're leafing through the play, or you're looking at the runtime at the bottom of your screen and you're thinking, I don't know about this. And then as you give yourself up to it, wonderful experience. Tons and tons and tons of fun. So now that you've caught up on training day, go forth and have a look at that same character. So he plays the exact same character in Macbeth. Take that forward and enjoy.
So it's Macbeth, it's not the Manchurian Candidate. Just to be certain, I want to make sure I'm watching the right Shakespearean, experiencing that correct Shakespearean story.
I don't know what I'm going to do with you, Joshua Hatton. I don't know what I'm going to do with you. First step is freeze a hot dog.
On that note, dear listener, if you want to be like Christopher Sebastian, you can email us questions at onenationunderwhiskey.com. No Ian Whiskey, info@singlecastnation.com. You could do that. Hey, if you want to send us samples like Ollie and Blind Barrels, we'll be happy to take them and go over them online. Now, we reserve the right to be vocal about loving them or vocal about not loving them. But if you want us to experience some of that on the podcast, we're happy to do that. You can email us and we'll give you an address for that. Jason, am I forgetting people to thank other than your good self and the listener?
Our Anna with our text, and
Anna, is it Anna
with his email, and
is it Anna or Anna?
Ollie with his. This is me ignoring you. This is Ollie with his email, and yeah, as you rightly say, the listeners for their good company and their willingness to indulge us in an end of spring, feels like summer, catch up bullshit session with our fourth parter that was so much fun. What a wonderful podcast. This is why we have the fun that we have, and my children, who are now on summer break, are dragging me out of my recording studio to go and play with them because, I'm not an old man who likes to sit in his chair and read his books. I will cheers all and sundry with my glasses here, Joshua. Lovely to see your face.
Likewise.
Lovely to catch up. Lovely to taste some whiskies together. And let's not ignore the fact that we got the first 2 blind samples correct from a lineup that we were able to limit based on smoky profiles.
Absolutely freaking amazing.
Cheers.
Cheers.